Kia ora koutou, no mai, haere mai. Hello and welcome, and thank you everyone for tuning up to today, and thank you for having me. A quick intro for myself, to add on to what Peter said. I'm a University of Auckland doctoral candidate. I started my PhD in April this year, and it's going to be focusing on grey-faced petrel in the Waitakere Ranges. My supervisory team is Professor James Russell and Dr. Brendan Dunphy from the School of Biological Sciences, and then Professor Simon Holdaway from the Archaeological Department, and then Dr. Todd Landers from Auckland Council. So grey-faced petrel, or oi, they have a total population size of about 165 to 250,000 breeding pairs, and these are distributed across 178 breeding sites in northern New Zealand, with the most of the density around the east coast, and the majority of these are on islands, with about 75% of birds breeding on only 20 islands. As well as island colonies, there are some mainland colonies. These include Tawharanui and Rapanui, and they're protected by a predator-proof fence. And then Mount Maunganui and Mount Karori, these are protected by community pest control. Out on the Waitakere Ranges coastline, their grey-faced petrel are found from Titirangi, Cornwallis, Whatapu, Kerikeri, Piha, Inawhatua, Tahinga, and Muriwai. The largest colony is on Ihu which is an inshore predator-resistant islet at Tahinga, and it's been the location of long-term monitoring by Department of Conservation seabird scientist Graham Taylor. A little bit more about the grey-faced petrel and their breeding cycle. So grey-faced petrel spend most of their time out at sea past the continental shelf, where they feed on squid, crustaceans, and fish. So they're not often seen by people during the day. However, as a seabird, they rely on land for laying their eggs and raising their chicks. There are also a couple of things about oi that make them particularly special. First, they are a winter breeder, whereas most seabirds lay their eggs and raise their chicks during the summer. Oi start coming back to breed during autumn, and then in July they lay a single egg. Oi are most active on land at night. They fly from the sea just as it gets dark. Then they swoop around in the air, calling out to their mates, trying to figure out where to land. Once they've found their spot, they crash land through the canopy like a bird that's fallen out of the sky. Once on the ground, they're a lot less mobile, and they hobble around looking for their burrow and for their mate. Another feature that make oi special is their ability to dig burrows like rabbits. This is where they mate, lay their egg, and raise their chick. They usually return to the same burrow each year. Grey-faced petrel, like lots of seabirds, are long-lived. They can live probably longer than 30 years, and they have also delayed maturation, with the birds only returning to the colony 3 to 5 years after fledging, and they typically breed at 8 to 10 years old. Back to the breeding cycle, the egg is usually incubated for about 55 days, so just under 2 months, and both sexes do this, so they have turns of about a week or so each. Between this time where they switch over, sometimes the egg can be left unattended for 1 to 5 days. Once the chick hatches, it's guarded for 1 to 3 days and then fed on average every 4 days. So this egg and chick stage is where they're most vulnerable. So grey-faced petrel on the Waitakere Ranges. It is thought that grey-faced petrel and other seabird species were more numerous across the ranges in the past, and that a mixture of human harvesting, habitat destruction, and predation from introduced mammals drove some species to go locally extinct, and others like grey-faced petrel to suffer dramatic population declines. Populations are now beginning to recover following years of community predator control work. My project, as Peter said, has a number of aspects to it, one of which is to uncover the dynamics between mammalian pests and grey-faced petrel. The hope is that looking at different colonies, which are managed in different ways, will show us what is working well for grey-faced petrel, and hopefully this can be related to other species such as shearwaters and diving petrels. This year I've started collecting breeding and pest data, and this will be done every year following to provide crucial information on how these pests are impacting grey-faced petrel. Currently, the breeding success that I've been recording is about 50 to 60% in most colonies, which I'm surveying, although I expect these will be slightly higher as I had some issues with data collection due to the lockdown. Pest monitoring has shown that most areas have rats, although at low abundance, except for the monitoring I've started at Tahinga, which is a positive sign, showing no rats tracked. Here are a couple images. An example over here is a grey-faced petrel egg that had been predated by a rat. You can see the marks around the side. And then this is a grey-faced petrel adult, which was likely predated by a cat at Muriwai. This is another image of a dead mammal, possibly a possum. I'm not sure if anyone will be able to give me any idea what that could be. And this was found right outside an active grey-faced petrel burrow with a chicken side. So it just demonstrates how close they come to interacting. Grey-faced petrel on the Waitaki Ranges. This is a map of all of the burrows that we know of at the moment. So there's some larger colonies at Te Hinga and Piha, and then the middle-sized ones are at Keikei and Muriwai, and then some smaller colonies at Whatapu, Cornwallis, and Titirangi. This goes to show about 5 or 6 years ago, there are some population estimates given from these areas. And at Te Hinga, there were, other than at Ehumoana, there were 12 recorded burrows. At Piha, there are 10 to 20. And at Keikei, there are only 5. So already we can see that these are starting to increase. Previous research done in the Waitaki Ranges, Todd Landers did a survey between Muriwai and Te Hinga, just identifying some of these burrows as well as little penguin burrows. And some recommendations came out of that, which have developed into my research goals. So the research goals are to improve mammalian predator control by understanding how grey-faced petrel react to different types of human and animal impacts. Development of a management plan that's aimed at increasing breeding success, recolonization rates, and population recovery of grey-faced petrel, as well as other recolonizing seabirds in the Waitaki Ranges. And then ultimately self-sustained long-term community restoration and conservation. This is a little bit about the pest monitoring I've been doing. So I've been looking at tracking tunnels across the ranges and to discover what sort of rat abundance we have. So this is an example of a set tracking tunnel on this side, and then on this side, it's a rat has been tracked through this one. The next step is to do some camera trapping. I haven't been able to start this, unfortunately, because I'm waiting on these new pouku lures, which are long life attractive lures for rats, and they have one for cats and mustelids as well. I'll also be looking at a lot of the work that the community groups have done using Catch IT and Pest New Zealand databases. The other aspect we'll be looking at burrow and population monitoring. So breeding success is looking at the number of eggs hatched and the number of chicks fledged. And then population estimates will be the number of breeding pairs at each site. Population estimates will be done using ground surveys, using transaxle plots, and acoustic surveys. And that'll be some work that I'll be starting next year. So to figure out breeding success, we need to look into the burrows to see if there's an adult bird and if it's on an egg. And some of these burrows can be really long. So what I need to do is I use what's called a burrowscope. So at one end, it's got a little camera that's got a long cord that you can connect to your phone. So what I do is I tape it to a stick and put the stick down the hole and look at my phone and see what I can see in there. Some of these holes can be very long. I've probably got just over a meter or probably 1.5 meter arm span, and then I have about 1.5 meter stick. So that's kind of demonstrates how long these can go. And all going to plan, this is what I get to see at the end. So this is a grey-faced petrel sitting on an egg. So thank you for listening to my talk. A couple of questions for everybody in the audience is, I would love to know if anyone out there has nesting grey-faced petrel near or around your house. If you have any pest data from the Waitaki Ranges that isn't going to be on Catch IT or Pest New Zealand. And if you want to be involved in restoring grey-faced petrel. If that sounds like anything that you can answer, then flick me an email. I've got my email address here, michael.fox@auckland.ac.nz. And if anyone has any questions, we've got a couple minutes of time. But first, a special thanks to Michelle, my supervisory team, and the Waitaki Ranges community for all the work that they've been doing.